Hey everyone, it's Simi Shah, and welcome to Trailblazers. Through this series, we bring you trailblazing by South Asians and for South Asians. We're the torchbearers, sharing the stories of the leaders and innovators lighting the way across the South Asian diaspora. Today on Trailblazers, I'm welcoming Rooshy Roy, founder and CEO of Aavrani. Aavrani is a premium skincare brand for women inspired by ancient Indian beauty traditions and rituals. Rooshy founded Aavrani in 2017 while getting her MBA at Wharton. To date, the company has raised upwards of $1.5 million in seed funding. Prior to founding Aavrani, Rooshy spent time in finance both as an investment banker and as a private equity investor. In the last several months, she not only launched Aavrani 2.0, but was also recently named a Forbes 30 Under 30, and she just got married. Rooshy, you're clearly an all-star, and I'm so thrilled to be speaking with you today.
Thank you for having me. All-star is probably a little bit of a stretch, but I appreciate it. Yeah, no, I'm excited to chat with you.
Yeah, so I imagine the last couple of weeks and months have been a whirlwind. Like I just said, you relaunched Aavrani, you just got married. I mean, I'd love to hear about what that experience has been like.
Getting married or launching Aavrani or just life?
Doing it all.
Doing it all. Okay. I think it's so funny that you say that because I don't think anyone ever feels like they are actually doing it all, yet we always assume everyone else is doing it all. And I say that with air quotes because there's just no such thing as that. And I think one of the most liberating things for me was realizing over the last year that I'm never going to get everything just right or just perfect. You kind of have to start and put yourself out there way before you're ready. And the growth and the sort of climb that you experience is just a part of the process. Like all the fear associated with not doing it right is almost like something you realize you have to go through, just like school, to get to the next level. So I would say, like you saying doing it all, I feel like I didn't do enough. From my perspective, working on the rebrand was something that I started last summer. Last summer, I just moved back to New York with my co-founder. We had both lived and spent our careers in New York, working in finance, banking, and PE, as you mentioned. And I pursued business school personally because I just wanted some time to figure out what I wanted to do. And still being pretty risk averse at the time, I was like, what is the most palatable thing I can do to my parents and to the world while also exploring my passion and what I actually want to do with my life? And business school was just that perfect opportunity for me. And people ask sometimes, did you need business school to start Aavrani, or was that critical? Even why did you stay in business school? Because we launched the brand in 2018 and it did amazingly well. It exceeded our expectations, but we still decided to come back and finish out our second years and get the degree. And it's because of the very fact that being in school enabled me to have the confidence and understanding of where my resources actually are to do Aavrani. I wouldn't have had the courage to just get started and put something out there had I not had that overhang and kind of protection of business school. Because at the end of the day, if Aavrani doesn't work out, I had to remind myself that I still have an accredited degree. I can go do a normal job. I can always go back to normal life. It gave me that comfort and that confidence. And so I would say business school is such a different experience. Grad school, really, it should be a personal decision for everyone. And it's really not for everyone. Some people don't need it to thrive in their career and be their best self, but I really did. So I started the brand with my co-founder, Justin, who, by the way, I met the second day of business school. It was one of those fluke opportunities, which I'm happy to talk more about. I really would not be here today without him and his kind of confidence in me to do this. Because at the time, I did not feel like I was well positioned to thrive as a beauty founder. We were in 2017, we're seeing this rosy picture of what it looks like to start a brand, especially with the peak of influencers and sort of just spin-off branding. Like, it's never been easier to enter a D2C brand. You can make a website pretty easily. You can outsource the product pretty easily, outsource branding. But that's when I realized a year into launch, so last summer, that I didn't feel very connected to the brand that I had built, or the quote unquote brand that I thought I had created. I didn't even have an appreciation for brand. I thought that if the product works great and we do what we say we do, which is amazing because these ingredients have healing powers that way too many people still don't know about, then the company will thrive, then it will succeed on its own merit. But after I realized about a year into the business just how competitive and just how saturated the space was, I decided that there needed to be a much more authentic story and element to the brand that touches people in their heart. Because at the end of the day, there are going to be 16 other companies that can get that same end product for you if they wanted to. They can replicate it. What they can't replicate is you and your voice and your drive, your why, your vision. And that's what inspired really the whole rebrand. So I started it last summer, and then the goal, of course, was to launch it ASAP, which at the time was spring of 2020.
Okay.
And then as COVID taught us all, you can't plan for anything. And nobody cares about what your plans are. It was a real shock for me where I had to reorient my team, reallocate our very limited budget, and really put my head down and build out the brand. All we had done up until spring was get the physical packaging done. I hadn't thought about what is the user experience on the website? How do I want the person to feel when they unbox it? How do I get that customer to love us so much that they're going to buy us again? And it's like, especially as we've learned in this time of COVID, nothing is so precious as our time alone where, we're actually content. It's almost sort of caused us to look inward and be a lot more intentional with the way we spend our time and take care of ourselves. And with all these brands out there, I'm realizing I'm competing for this 10 minutes of alone time with this person where they're taking care of themselves and they're understanding the benefits of doing so. I better be really, really great, make that person feel so good to see Aavrani on their countertop that they're going to want to engage with our products and remain loyal customers. So yeah, I would say in the last month we've launched. So it hasn't even been a full 30 days yet. We launched on August 15th,
You
India's
launched on my
Independence Day.
birthday.
And that's your birthday as well. Oh wow, how auspicious. Is that the most Indian thing I've ever said? Honestly, that's amazing. I love to hear that. These dates align for a reason.
Absolutely.
So yeah, it hasn't even been a month. Right now I'm starting to realize I need to reorient my time and attention. I spent over 75% of my time heads down crafting this brand. And now I have to think about, how do I get it out there? How do I tell the stories? How do I make others understand this is so much bigger than just me? I felt like I had done a lot of storytelling and introspection through the process. And now I want to be able to just share that with others and basically remind women that we all have the same insecurities. None of us feel like we have it all or are perfect. And all the women that we think look perfect, I promise you, they don't think that about themselves. And, I would love to be able to share that journey and personal growth that I've experienced in myself and understanding how much more beauty is than how we appear on the outside. Like the fact that if we don't speak to ourselves kindly, if we don't get enough sleep, if we're not eating right, who cares what you're applying to your face? Who cares what concealer you're using or what scrub, right? Like beauty is really something you feel from the inside out. And our products and skincare and even makeup, that just elevates confidence on a temporary basis. We've got to have that foundation
on a
down.
consistent basis.
So, exactly. So I'm in the throes of trying to figure out how best to deliver that message in the most authentic way, because I want, first and foremost, other Indian American women, such as yourself, such as me, to feel celebrated and seen and beautiful in a way that we've never seen in the context of beauty. And interestingly, I realized like even in India, we don't aspire to look like Indians. We aspire to Western standards of beauty. So there's a lot of disconnect in even celebrating our own roots and our own look. Like we are so much more beautiful than we even see. And that I would love to inspire that confidence. And then, of course, as I said, help other women understand this isn't just an Indian thing. We know that, you know that. Like, let's share these amazing, clean products because I truly believe Indian beauty is that next wave of global disruption in the industry. We've seen Korean inspired beauty, otherwise known as K beauty, have entire sections now at retailers. I want to see that for Indian inspired beauty. And in order to have that, I need to collaborate with more founders, collaborate with other Indian American women, really create that cult-like community around our brand on a shared sort of value and vision basis.
Absolutely. There's so much I want to unpack there, and it's just so clear how much your passion shines through and how much you care about what you're doing. I would love to start by hearing about the inception of Aavrani. You mentioned that it was at the beginning of business school during preterm, I believe, with Justin. How did that all happen?
I love that you use the word preterm, you know, the lingo. It was preterm. It was the second day of preterm. So like first week of August in 2017. And I'll never forget because I had even gone into Wharton kind of with a shitty attitude because my dream school was Stanford, GSB. And I didn't even realize until halfway into Wharton, the reason that was my dream school is because I had this notion that in order to be an entrepreneur, well, I should be around Silicon Valley. Like literally at the headline, most surface level assumption drove this attitude of mine where I was like, I wish I was there. And so I went to Wharton as like, okay, fine, let's do this thing. Literally thinking that any day now they'll call me and I'll just have to move to Cali next month, you know? And so I didn't go in with an open mind. And I remember with preterm specifically, as I'm sure all business schools do, they start getting you on teams, doing activities, you know, there's ropes courses, and there's also business simulations like on the computer and all this stuff, getting you to work with others and the whole thing. And I was just so annoyed because I'm like, I don't need to get to know all these people. I'm going to have to leave, or they're all financy. They're not going to like have anything interesting to talk about. Like I was so ridiculous in all these crazy assumptions. And a lot of the time when people would introduce themselves, which by the way, at every turn, if you're alone, someone will introduce themselves because business school is nothing without the network, right? And Justin turns and is like, hey, I'm Justin, and starts talking to me. And I'm like, oh God, oh my God, not like, I don't have the energy for this right now. And he is so excitable and he radiates energy and enthusiasm. And it was almost to the degree that I couldn't disengage. I couldn't privately roll my eyes and start thinking about something else. He was just so captivating in everything because he was just actually very curious and actually like really thoughtful about what he was saying. He wasn't trying to just sell himself to me like it kind of felt like I was seeing a bunch of other intros go. He's like, so I was in PE too. And I'm like, okay, great. Like, I also don't want to talk about this. I'm trying to leave that. And he's telling me about his experience serving as an operating partner on Tatcha Beauty, which is a Japanese inspired brand. Two HBS grads created this skincare brand based off of ancient Japanese traditions. So matcha, black charcoal, rice bran oil, these ingredients that they've used for centuries and that hadn't been yet introduced in the US, at least in a modern digestible format. And this man, this white Jewish man, is telling me about this founder bringing these ancient traditions from her learnings from a geisha. And I'm like, he's actually interested in this. And by the way, there are all these Indian rituals, all these Indian traditions and customs that are so deeply rooted in our culture. It's beyond skincare. It's integrated in our weddings, in our pujas, in literally the way we build community, especially among women. There's an entire different system and sort of cadence to beauty. In India, it's it's self-care. It's something you do with a process and with intention. In the US, we see a lot of beauty trying to be instant gratification or a quick fix to an issue, like a chemical induced spot treatment or a miracle mask that makes you look 10 years younger. We're kind of creating this disillusion that beauty is an overnight sort of thing. And so I was sharing all these things with Justin, and he's like, okay, so you're saying that there's literally no ready-made turmeric mask that I could just go to the store and buy. And I'm like, no, you just can't do that. Like, you have to make it at home. And I specifically remember my grandmother would add neem if I had acne issues, raw honey if it was dehydration I was suffering from, chickpea flour, yogurt, egg white, all these things that had very intentional and specific benefits for the skin. And he's like, okay, so why don't we do it? Why don't we create that turmeric mask? And I was like, haha, okay, yeah, right, kind of thing. But that kind of thing where I'm like, all right, I'll entertain the conversation. Like, okay, yes, if we lived in Paris and quit our jobs and had a bajillion dollars, like, sure, let's talk about this fantasy. And he was just at every turn, when he would sense my sort of hesitation or reluctance to continue the conversation, he's like, well, why don't you think we can do it? And kind of putting me on the spot with that. So like when I would say, well, where would we start? What would we call it? He's like, well, you could do it. You're the one who knows the product. You're going to create the brand exactly how you want it. But what I've seen is companies that start at the top half of the alphabet typically just are more successful than companies that start with a letter from the bottom half.
Interesting.
And it was only from his own experience of reviewing investment memos, company listings. Like even if you look at the NASDAQ ticker symbol list, it's all in alpha order. So he said he found himself spending a lot of time on A through C and then sort of skimming through, the middle of the alphabet. Nobody ever knew anything about the companies that started at the end. And these were all just anecdotal, right? There's no actual factual evidence that, yes, companies that start with A do X% better than companies that start with B, right? Like we started to understand that there are some things we just need to go with our intuition on. And so I was like, okay, this man is like, at least has an opinion on things. He's not going to be like, okay, you do what you want, which really means like, okay, figure it out and do the work. It's let's figure out where I can contribute and things that are in your wheelhouse versus mine. And I immediately felt this sense of, okay, I can work with this person. And he's taken me out of my shitty attitude from like the 20 minutes ago I started this conversation. Like, imagine if this was all the time with work, because in my experience, I had never loved my work. And I say that in air quotes again, because when you're working as a means to an end, you're not fulfilled from it. You don't want to wake up every day excited to go to work. Most of the time I would not.
Yeah.
And my fantasy was not having to delineate between waking up for work and waking up just to get up, because I'm a human being, right? And now I feel like I'm actually finally there. And that first conversation with Justin inspired me to think about, okay, let me set myself up better for success than I have in the past too. I don't have to love everyone I work with all the time, but if they can bring out something good in me and I can bring out something good in them, then there might be something here. So he really inspired a mindset shift for me. We started on the business like right away. Within the first 2 weeks of that conversation,
wow.
We transferred all our money that we had saved up and were going to spend on tuition to a joint business account, and then took out loans for the rest of business school and created a business plan, thought about, okay, with the money we have, what can we do? We realized at best we could afford R&D on up to 6 products, knowing that not all 6 would be able to come to fruition at the end, and do a minimum order quantity of 1,000 units each. And that's it. That's all we could pay for. And so we needed to orient around that and decide that, okay, if we sell out of this within X amount of time and we need to reorder, okay, this is how much more funding we're going to need. This is how much more talent we'll need on the team, et cetera, and kind of worked backwards from there. and ended up soft launching the business that summer between business school. And then, as I said, moved back here in May of 2019, where all signs pointed to, okay, this is something worth exploring. People are excited about it. Now let's take it to that next level. And then so began the fundraising process for the seed round, which we closed at the end of the year at just over 2 million in 2019. And then kicked off January of 2020, really crafting the brand, as I'd mentioned at the beginning of this conversation. So really excited to finally have launched, as I said, not even a month ago. And, really just trying to figure out, what do I do next? What are the next steps here for me?
Wow, that is such a remarkable story to hear how quickly you guys went from meeting to conceiving this idea and then going full-fledged on being in business together. I know something that you mentioned was you wanted to be an entrepreneur. That was something that you were looking to do, and it was part of the reason you wanted to go to Stanford's business school, GSB. Did you expect that you would end up being an entrepreneur in this particular space?
Absolutely not. And the thing is, even if I had gone to GSB, I wouldn't have thought I could be an entrepreneur right away. I still had in the back of my mind this arbitrary list of boxes I needed to check before I was quote unquote ready to pursue entrepreneurship, i.e. be on my own. And the biggest lesson of all is like, there's no such thing as that, and you're never ready, right? And I'm thankful now that I didn't go to GSB, because I feel like I would have gotten this false sense of, okay, I'm on the track to be an entrepreneur. Let me not mess this up by starting right away.
Yeah.
I would have inhibited myself. And being at Wharton almost inspired me or pushed me to want to do it more, because being the type of school Wharton is tends to attract a lot of students from the finance field, or a lot of students who want to break into finance or consulting. And seeing that around me, being just overwhelmed by that classic button up suit that was all I saw for 6 years straight, I was like, wow, I cannot go back to that. And I needed that almost. So it was all a blessing. It was a wonderful stroke of luck where I ended up.
That really resonates. I mean, as I mentioned to you earlier, I spent some time in finance. And I think that at this age, even just when I look around, people do have a very contrived notion of what success is supposed to look like. And it's like this entire mindset shift of like, no, success is like what you will make it. There's not a timeline. It's jumping on opportunities as they come. So it's awesome to hear you actually say that and live it.
Absolutely. Something important I would encourage everyone to do is revisit their definition of success. There's almost an ingrained thing in us, even more so, of course, in the Indian diaspora, that success looks like getting good grades, going to an Ivy League school, being a certain type of professional. And when we deconstruct that a little bit and realize why maybe those sorts of things were pressed upon us, given our parents having come to this country with not that much, or having to navigate it and learn the language for the first time, and just assimilate with their surroundings. That was the best they could do, is say, hey, these are the things you can do that I didn't get to do. So this is what I came here for, right? And then as a kid, you're like, I got to do this for them, right? And we don't realize that they were doing that to keep us safe. They weren't doing that to constrain us.
Exactly.
And sometimes the limitations are a lot more self-imposed than we realize.
100%. I see that in my own life. And so to hear you say that really resonates. I would love to hear a little bit more about how that South Asian identity influenced your work with Aavrani.
Yeah, so I would say that was the most fulfilling part of this Aavrani journey for me, was getting on a track where I am much more comfortable with my South Asian identity, and really getting to a point where I'm not only comfortable, but I'm proud of it. This is me, and I feel I've never felt cooler to be Indian in my life. And I've sort of realized that Aavrani isn't just about beauty, isn't just about capitalizing on this trend in all natural products. This is about making India cool and aspirational and showing Indians and non-Indians in the US the depth and breadth of Indian culture. There's so much more to it than I was appreciating. I grew up going to Kolkata every year for nearly a month at a time and thought I had an understanding of what Indian culture is and what it looks like through those very isolated and brief periods of time. And I had made all these assumptions about it based off of those limited experiences. And then, of course, based off of the Indian American community that we had cultivated at home. I didn't know that being Indian could also mean being vibrant, audacious, bold, celebratory. And when I say I didn't know, I meant I didn't know I had the permission to define what Indian culture meant for me. There's nothing more exciting for me than when someone non-Indian is like, wow, I love that outfit. What is that? And it's like some handcrafted, intense, beaded Indian embroidery thing that I'm just so excited to tell them about, because finally in my life, I feel like people are aspiring to my culture and what I want to be and how I look, when I'd spent my entire life doing that with white people. And that was because those were the people around me. I grew up in a predominantly white suburb of Detroit. And it wasn't really until we soft launched Aavrani that I realized that this is the beauty brand that I needed growing up to remind me that, hey, I know you don't look like other people, but that doesn't make you any less beautiful. In fact, it is your bushy eyebrows, or like if you look at my ears right now, they stick out like crazy. They're so asymmetrical. It's these quirks that we hide from because we kind of create a false standard of beauty based off what we see other people gravitate towards, and whatever doesn't match with us is a problem. And I want to reverse that notion, not just it's not a problem, but this is my beauty. And especially for Indian Americans, trying to give that to them, hopefully for the first time, or likely for the first time, not hopefully, because it's become that for me. So I realized that as part of Aavrani. It wasn't until the brand was out there in the older traditional packaging that we'd created. I didn't even think about brand. I just slapped together whatever I thought made sense from a logical lens. Like, okay, it should be green because it's natural. Millennial pink is a hot color. Let's add some of that. Yellow gold is a thing in India. Let's embellish it with that. That was like the way I took it. This time around, I looked at Indian influence on my branding through my own perspective. I wasn't sort of waiting for other people to tell me what's Indian enough or whether this will resonate with people like me. My favorite color is blue. And so I went with electric blue as the grounding
It's
color to
beautiful.
create palette brown. Thank you.
I love
Thank
it.
you. Thanks. I appreciate it. It's so funny that I still get so grateful when people say they love the blue, because you have no idea the number of people who told me that blue isn't Indian enough. And lo and behold, I find out that literally the word indigo comes from India, when denim was washed and dyed and created in Rajasthan. And so
Wow.
indigo was because
I
it
didn't know
was
that.
exported from there. So blue couldn't be more Indian, but it ended up being such a fluke and such a point of joy for me because it came from the inside, and then it conveniently ended up being on brand or acceptable to others, right? And that was the biggest inflection point in my mindset of, let me create this thing from my own lens. If I say something is Indian enough, who's to say it's not? It's up to me, not them, right? And creating a brand for myself first was the best thing I had ever done, because it enabled me to have confidence in the little things like filling out the color palette. The first time around, I was just asking everyone else around me, like, what do I do? How do I fill this out? Where's the color expert? Where's the branding expert? I was trying too hard to have other people interpret what I was trying to do.
That makes a ton of sense. And was there an inciting moment where you were like, I want to relaunch this brand?
The realization I wanted to relaunch it was the fact that the next level of growth, the next production order, would have to be in the tens of thousands.
Okay.
And so I was like, wait a minute, do I really want to keep going with this? Like when I'm feeling increasingly disconnected from a personal perspective, like if I can't own and share proudly, hi, I'm Rooshy, I'm the founder and CEO with a straight face. Like I used to giggle when I'm like, yeah, CEO, but like not really, I just started it. All the sort of qualifications we give ourselves, especially women. I didn't even have the confidence of looking someone straight in the eye and saying, I'm the CEO and founder of a brand until I sort of created it myself. And that disconnect that kind of got to its peak last summer alongside the realization that, okay, objectively from a business growth perspective, you're signing up for this look and feel forever then. The challenge was telling myself, okay, you're not in any sort of rush here. Don't put something out there that you only feel wishy-washy about or feel confident about 70% of the time, because that's not going to last. Take the time, take a step back. Don't worry. It's not like getting held back a grade. And by the way, that doesn't matter at all. So forget everything our parents told us about trying to accelerate life as fast as possible. Take your time, enjoy the process, and if you can make it work from a funding perspective, i.e., I can manage to pay my employees, run and operate the business in a steady way while I do this, then this is the best investment I can take. This is the real bet on myself. I had no sense of how long it was going to take. I just knew that if I wanted to launch that next production order in time without being sold out for too long on product, I needed to get it out there by the spring of this year. And then, as we said, with COVID and everything, no one cares about plans, not even you. So,
Well, it's amazing to hear what led you there, and you guys did launch successfully. So I imagine that must be very exciting. I want to go back to something that you mentioned on the topic of funding. Obviously, you have a background in finance, but the beauty and skincare marketplace is generally a saturated one. And I personally understand the Indian identity perspective and what Aavrani is offering, but I imagine a lot of your investors didn't, or a lot of investors don't. So, what was your fundraising process like, and what was your pitch to investors to get them on board?
yeah, no, I have to tell you a story to set the stage because you'll appreciate this. In one of the many pitch meetings, which by the way were almost always all men over 40. We'd be lucky if there was one or two women in the room. That would change the dynamic, but it's mostly men. And I was pretty cocky about the way I could handle them, in the sense that I've done this before. I've worked with them. Like this is all I know, really. I'm set up to succeed here. Except this time I was trying to sell a beauty brand. I wasn't working in banking. I not PE. Like there was this automatic assumption that I'm this little cute girl who makes some beauty products because she wants to look pretty and wants some money, and might be like, a lot of influencers have gotten a lot of investment lately as well. So I'd often get the question like how much I share my YouTube tutorials or how often I engage with my audience. And it's like, no, I'm a businesswoman. I don't have an audience here. This is a product. This is like a real normal widget type of business. Like there's nothing, cutesy about it. Like just because I'm walking in here as a beauty brand founder, it was suddenly so clear to me that all the stereotypes and sort of the idea of the glass ceiling that I read about and hear about all the time, and kind of thought, that doesn't apply to me. I'm at Goldman Sachs. This is fine. I kind of realized that if I don't see people who look anything like me around me, I am that representation. And I have basically spent my career adjusting and assimilating to someone else's metrics of success. And as somewhere along the way, I thought that, okay, if my attention to detail isn't in the top 10% of my associate class, that doesn't mean I'm a shitty person or that I should take that at all personally. It just means that on this metric that they arbitrarily decide is important to them, the worst and best part of it was realizing that the metrics even that they use to review you, like let's say there are 10 metrics, attention to detail, financial modeling, attitude, whatever. In those metrics, I was competing with people whose best skills aligned almost perfectly with those metrics. Like them as people and them as their innate talent aligned perfectly. For me, those were just 10 of 100 things I'm really good at. And by the way, those 10 things happen to be maybe the things that I'm second best at. I'm actually the best at creativity, connecting with customer, all these things that we can just come up with now in my life today. I didn't even realize I was missing out on executing on those things. I didn't know I had it in me. I didn't think I was a creative person. I didn't think I was artsy. None of these things were ever mentioned in my years in finance. Therefore, I thought I didn't have them. And it's really important that we, especially during this time where we're all kind of stuck at home and confronting ourselves and what we want and what makes us happy, I would implore everyone to spend more time on the things that make them lose track of time. And that's the thing that you need to gravitate towards and do more of, because that's where your real talent lies.
Absolutely. I can't even tell you how much that resonates. I mean, that sentiment played such a big role in me deciding to leave private equity. I spent a summer in banking. I spent a summer in asset management, thought this is what I was going to do with the rest of my life.
No, I can even tell here, and the way we're chatting right now, just like even the look on your face, I can tell how much you love getting to know people and building this podcast of yours. This is that passion project that's just coming out of your heart because you want to do it. No one's paying you, no one's grading you, no one's assessing your performance. This is the kind of thing that more people need to explore for themselves.
100%. You totally describe my feelings with respect to the work I'm doing now. And it honestly even translates to my own professional journey, having left finance and now transitioned to media. And it's also a big part of the advice I've been trying to give to my friends over the last several months, many of whom are teetering on the edge of making that same sort of leap around passion. So really appreciate you saying that. Something else I'm curious about is we obviously talked about the fundraising side of things and some of the challenges you face there. When I was working in finance, I actually spent some time covering the beauty industry, specifically around packaging of products and formulation. Amazing. And I was really caught off guard by the fact that the management of these companies tended to be heavily dominated by men. It also tended to be fairly non-diverse. Has that been your experience on the back end side of things? And how have you approached that if it's presented any challenges?
Yes, 100%. And it's not even just the back end side of things. It's the front end of beauty editors, writers, the people that control a lot of the access to media and entertainment. I mean, one of the biggest learnings I had to internalize through the first year is a lot of people aren't going to get it. They're not going to understand why this product is special. A lot of times people have these certain senses of Indian culture, right? That's Taj Mahal, spices, and whatever, overpopulation, right? And there's not that sense of inherent luxury or prestige that a brand like Tatcha gets so easily from a country like Japan. I took a lot of that stuff very personally at first, which is just rampant everywhere, of people just not understanding what we're trying to do, not thinking it's that special, denying the fact that Indian beauty might be the next wave, or saying, no, it's actually G beauty or A beauty, whatever it might be. You have to have almost like so much conviction in what you're doing that you know that someone else is wrong about it, right?
Yeah.
Like that's kind of just the attitude you have to go about it, and just not even worry about the fact that it's all men or all white people or this and that, because we can focus on that stuff forever, and kicking and screaming about it doesn't go anywhere. It causes noise, and it's important to bring attention to the facts of the situation. But I have tried to shift my mind to, okay, how do we navigate it? How do we help people understand where we're coming from? And really it's just a matter of getting to know these people better. I'm trying to reach out to PR people on an individual basis so that I can actually build friendships. I think the biggest thing I've realized through this process of the exact question you were asking me, and I'll answer it now, I guess, at the highest level, is I realized that you don't hear what people say on a word by word basis. You imagine what they might have meant. And if you take that to an example of two Indian women like you and me, if I say turmeric mask, when you imagine what I mean, you see the creation of the haldi, the yellow staining, the sticky dripping mess, all of that, the bright orange. You get that
Yeah.
feeling in your heart, right?
That's the
And
exact image I have in my head.
yes. And when you say turmeric mask to, let's say, a 54-year-old white lady in Kansas, what is she even thinking? I had no idea. I thought if I say turmeric mask, everyone sees it like I see it, right? And meanwhile, when I'm talking to some people and they can't even say the word turmeric, or is it turmeric? And it's just like, wow, really? That's where we're at? Like, I had no idea. And so I'm realizing we need to get to know each other better so we can help get some sort of glimpse into our lived experiences so we can imagine what each other mean better. And that's all just a matter of open communication and being willing to explore and not focus on all the things in our way.
That's a great point and super interesting because it's exactly what came to mind for me when you said that. So obviously we touched on this earlier, but you're drawing a ton of inspiration from Indian beauty traditions and rituals. But South Asian beauty brands have actually received a ton of criticism in the past number of years and months because of the beauty standards they sometimes propagate. I think the most recent example of that being Fair and Lovely received a ton of backlash in the aftermath of the death of George Floyd, and also just the general momentum around the Black Lives Matter movement and just having this conversation around colorism within the South Asian community. How have you navigated that sort of brand consciousness within Aavrani? Is it something that you've had to navigate or consider more deeply, just given ingredients or certain other traditions you might be utilizing as inspiration?
I would say that no, because if anything, our product and our mission is the movement away from that, right? I think for so long, when people think about Indian beauty products, it is Fair and Lovely. It is that, but it's also that blue coconut oil bottle.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, it's a lot of different things. It's really what we decide to remind people of what it means and what it means to us that makes all the difference. We are essentially the antithesis of a Fair and Lovely by nature of our mission and business model. If anything, I feel very confident, or I'm very inspired by the backlash that those types of brands are getting, because the growth of those companies were disheartening, because that means a lot of people are buying into it. The fact that they're being called out now means that we are progressing away from this false standard of beauty that we've been putting on ourselves.
Absolutely. I think that makes a ton of sense. What are some of the other unexpected challenges that you faced in starting and running this business?
So many. Like today, last week, I mean, I don't even know where to start. I think one of the biggest learnings I had is even what it means to be a CEO. We tend to glorify CEO as like this person that's in charge, but I'm realizing that I'm so far from being a good CEO. I'm still very much a founder, and I am a psycho about control. I need to have things in a certain way. And it was really my team, Justin mostly, because him and I are just so different as people. I have really learned so much about myself and how I am received through the lens of my team, because there has been nothing like trying to motivate a group of individuals who are there for their own reasons, but most importantly, because they believe in the mission. How do you keep them inspired? How do you keep them driven through COVID, when we couldn't pay for a little while. What is their reaction? And how can we actually collaborate together? Because I have no fucking idea what I'm doing ever. So
I don't
when
believe that,
they,
but okay.
no, but when they look at me like, so are we working from the office now? I'm like, you tell me, are you comfortable with it? Because I don't, like, I'm not going to make you, you know what I mean? And I even forget sometimes that, wait, I have to have an opinion on this thing. And I have had to thought about it way before this moment. I joke that my chief of staff, Redima, she texted me the night before. She's like, oh, by the way, what's the dress code before her first day of work? And I look at myself, I'm literally in sweatpants. I haven't showered in 3 days, just chock full of dry shampoo. And I'm like, I should really come up with a dress code. How would I like her to come into the office? I need to start dressing like that. You know what I mean? And that's just how it goes. You don't know these things when you start. But if you are mission driven and you remain committed to why you're doing something, things will fall in place and people will be accommodating and compassionate and understand. It's a lot less intimidating once you get the ball rolling. The biggest piece of advice I give is just start that process wherever you're at. If that involves even telling your parents, or next time you have a conversation, like bring it up. Hey, I'm thinking about starting X. What do you think about it? Get that feedback, get your mind share committed to that idea. That's where it all begins.
That's amazing. I appreciate how candid you are with respect to that, because it's a perspective that people aren't always so willing to give and offer. So really appreciate that. I'd be curious to hear a little bit about the evolution of your team. I know that Nina Davuluri, former Miss America from 2014, was a brand partner of yours. So in the midst of this relaunch, among other things, would be curious how you go about thinking about building your team and just the general evolution of it with partnerships with people like her, among others.
Yeah, so Nina remains a stakeholder in the company. So we're on the same page, and I wish nothing but the absolute best for her. She was integral to our initial brand launch. When we soft launched the brand in the summer of 2018, we were able to reach much more of our target consumer because of who she is and what she stands for. And to be honest, in many ways, she is what inspired me to even believe that maybe I could make a mark in beauty, right? I had never seen anyone who looked remotely like me on national television.
Yeah.
And here she is wearing Indian clothes and dancing in our culture in the most authentic way on ABC. It was just like such an experience. I remember when she won, even my parents were proud of her, as though like suddenly we're all just one big happy family in the US. It was beautiful. It was so unifying. So that was a big reason why I was really excited to partner with her as part of the soft launch. As we grew the company, and as I had mentioned through this conversation, a lot of the reasons why I wanted to do this, the way in which I wanted to do it changed because I had to be more introspective and revisit like my own motivation really. And it sort of reoriented in a way that didn't make sense for us to continue working together. She wanted to pursue a lot of the amazing work that she's actually rolling out with now, like the documentary and as well as the end colorism campaign. That was more of her focus, whereas I realized that our focus wanted to be a little bit different in the context of the beauty conversation. And so we parted ways after a year in partnership together. So last summer, after it ended, that was sort of that inflection point into crafting the V2 brand as you see it today.
That makes a ton of sense. And it's always amazing to see brown women supporting other brown women. So I love it. Again, something that we've talked about a ton at this point is beauty is a very saturated market. And as you've thought about this V2 launch, what do you consider the competitive differentiation that Aavrani has that you offer to your customers?
So ultimately, the competitive differentiation is the product and its efficacy. But as I had said, that doesn't really get you very far in the beginning. That is what makes you last and makes you build a loyal customer base and all the things that you need to thrive as a business in the later stages. But at the initial point, as I had alluded to, because the beauty landscape is so saturated, there's got to be a point of connection that's much deeper than the product itself. And the moment that I reoriented my mindset to, I am building the beauty brand for me, my whole sort of perspective shifted on competition in the space. I used to see other Indian inspired beauty brands or really Indian inspired personal care as a potential competitor, right? If it's exactly skincare, they're a tier 1 competitor. And if it's hair care, they're tier 2.
Yeah.
And like I was very analytical about it. And stepping back and thinking about my purpose, my why, and the motivation behind the V2 brand, it really is to disrupt the global beauty industry in a way that introduces Indian beauty with a bang. Like it's not just one measly brand somewhere doing one thing. In order to start the conversation, in order to really make a disruption, you have to create an entire category. There needs to be 30, 40, 50 brands out there that all have different cult followings and all have this sort of Indian inspiration behind it, because unless we get there, no one else will be phased, right? Why should anyone else care until we draw attention to ourselves? And that's what we have seen with K Beauty, what we've seen with all the French beauty brands that have thrived and are huge now. It really takes a lot more to start a conversation like that. And that's the level of difference I want to make with my work and my life. It's not about building a business to suit my personal lifestyle. It's about really making a mark and an impact at scale that is much bigger than me personally.
And that's a wonderful segue into what I wanted to ask next. I mean, is that what you envision for the future of the brand? You want it to be a big box brand? Do you want to expand outside of skincare? What does that look like?
Yeah. So when you say big box brand, I'm not sure if you mean like
a household brand, like a household skincare
like a
brand.
household brand. Yes, absolutely. And I want it to be not just a household brand, but in the early stages, a point of encouragement for other Indian beauty brands to enter the market. I think there was a lot of fear, and I'm saying this because I experienced it myself for the first year of the business, that Indian brands can't be that unique or that off the cuff or that differentiated. There's a very clear sort of persona of the Indian brand consumer. And the most important thing is deconstruct all assumptions altogether. Because if we're going to try to create a brand new interpretation of Indian culture, we're going to have to do it in a way that is completely unprecedented, right? That's what's going to help us break through. So I would love for us to also encourage other Indian beauty brands or just other Indian women, because we have so much more potential than we realize. Like we can dance really well. Well, not me, and be really good at math, which is a thing where there's this whole like, oh, you're either analytical or you're artsy.
Yep.
And I have never seen more women do both than Indian women.
I agree.
You know what I mean? And so I can't wait to inspire more of us to sort of break through that false notion of not being able to do something because we look a little different or that we're women or we have a different paradigm. That's what I want Aavrani to be about. Really, really reminding Indian women specifically that we've got it. That's why Aavrani is there. I was inspired to remind people that, you know, we are royalty. We are queens if we say so. It's like, that's all it takes.
And to that point, what exactly was the inspiration behind the name besides Justin telling you guys needed to be at the beginning of the alphabet?
So I'm really glad you brought it back to that. So I wanted Ronnie to be in there.
Okay.
I knew I had to have it there. And it was important to me to have it in Bangla because I almost kind of wanted it to be a subtle secret. Like non-Indians can learn about it and it can be a gateway to understanding that Rani means queen. But most people don't know it until I point it out, right? And I want Indian women to always remember, like, this is for them. I'm making this for them, and always remember that because the word Rani is right there. And we both decided, myself and Justin, that we wanted our own word. So Rani in and of itself was not going to be enough. It would be too hard to get the website address, the social, all of that. And it'd be hard to be unique. People could confuse it with other things. So him saying, let's start with an A, and me having Rani, I also realized, let me do him one better. I'll add another A, because when you translate Indian languages to English alphabet, the double A is a really common sound. And so it was double A and Rani. And then I went through the alphabet, swapping in all 26 letters.
Wow.
And Aavrani V was the one that Justin and I were like, that's the one. And we never looked back from there.
That's amazing. I have one last question for you.
Sure.
Speaking to this whole idea of collaboration and lifting up other South Asian women, what advice do you have for aspiring South Asian entrepreneurs who look at your path and want to find ways to emulate it in their own way?
Yeah, so I used to give the advice of just start, which I already gave you. I still think it's really important and probably one of the biggest hurdles to get past. But as I've been speaking with more people and appreciating where a lot of women are coming from, I think the actual first hurdle is networking and getting to know other women who are doing it, who are building their businesses. It doesn't matter what industry it is, what their product, what their service is. Sometimes all we need to see is more people who look like us following their passion. And it sounds so simple, but as we talked about earlier in this conversation, a lot of times we don't revisit what our interpretation of success is or what that looks like, right? And so it's almost become normalized to be following the career path, doing the thing, following the steps, getting the promotion on a timely basis. So it's scary to step out of that. And especially as an entrepreneur, nobody's giving you a pat on the back or giving you the review of good job. Like, there were good things associated with that sort of structure in the corporate world too, because I didn't even realize how much validation I needed sometimes. Like, I'll work really hard on something, put it up, and just like wait and see if we get more sales. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, no one's telling me like really swift execution on that website update, right? Like, you don't get it. And so I think the first and most critical thing to do is to make the effort to network, reach out to your role models and heroes on LinkedIn. I promise you, they are reading it just like I read every single message I get. Be intentional about your outreach. Don't just blast around people, but find women who are following their purpose in a way that actually inspires you. And I promise the cold email will flow out of you because you already know what you want to say. And being able to connect with other women and role models at their heart inspires like no other. You realize, you know what? They have no fucking idea what they're doing either. I can do this too.
That's really powerful and honestly something I feel like I've picked up on in this conversation. So thank you so much. This has really been awesome.
I'm so happy to do that. And that's a big reason why I share this candidly. Not enough entrepreneurs do that. It's early stage is just so opaque.
Yeah.
And if we can make that a little more transparent, then we can inspire another wave of incredible women to come out in the forefront and make an impact.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Rooshy. I think that was incredibly well said and clearly just such a testament to who you are and what Aavrani stands for. So really looking forward to seeing all that you're up to next. This is a podcast from Trailblazers Media. For more content on South Asian trailblazing, follow us at South Asian Trailblazers on Instagram and Facebook.